Thank you, Jen. Good morning. I am so happy to have you join us here today. I am Reverend Denis Cawley. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the Assistant Minister for Pastoral Care here at Unitarian Universalist Church West. I want to thank everyone who helped contribute to this service today, including my friends who are here on screen with me, as well as the plants that hold the soil our church and our home sit on, the rocks and foundation of our earth. I want to thank the native Potawatomi who once walked here, and all of you who are tuning in. Thank you for our wonderful staff and all of you who contribute to make our church possible. We are grateful for this community. I love flowers and growing vegetables, though lately I feel like I battle with bindweed more than my garden actually is an action today of gardening. Many of you know I also draw plants and paint images like the one behind me. I draw from photos I take on my walks and adventures in nature and even my garden. I don't draw the bindweed, though. That time to reflect and center me lets me consider the wisdom of our earth, and it speaks to my soul. It calms me. Religious naturalist, botanist, and bryologist, who's also a native of the Potawatomi, Robin Wall Kimmerer, says, I've heard it said many times that in return for the gifts of this earth, gratitude is enough. Our uniquely human gift to express our thanks because we have this awareness and collective memory to remember the world that could be, well, otherwise less generous than it is. But I think we are called to go beyond cultures of gratitude, to once again become cultures of reciprocity. We are not in control. What we are in control of is our relationship to the earth. Today's service is all about that, our relationship within the order of the earth and the universe as a whole. Whoever you are, from wherever you come, you are welcome here. Whomever you love, however you define family, you are welcome. The identities you hold, how you want to be called, and the pronouns you choose are respected and welcome here. Whatever the color of your skin, the language your grandparents spoke, the cultures that move in your being, the abilities and disabilities you hold, we welcome you. Whatever you believe, whatever your theology, prayer, or sacrament, even if none at all, we welcome you. We unite in Unitarian Universalist principles. We are a community of communities, spiritual seekers acting out our faith in justice, united in covenant and the spirit of love. We welcome all of you. Welcome to our service of love. Now it is time for David and Sarah Stokes to light our chalice.
The great green earth surrounds us with beautiful bird songs, starlight, rain-splashed sunshine, cooling shade, and the warm company of human companions.
Nature holds us tenderly, and because we remember everything we have and everything we are comes from the earth, we light this chalice with gratitude for all that nature gives.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Dave Cicero, Director of Lifespan Religious Education here at UU Church West, and I ask that people refer to me with he, his, or they pronouns. Our July season of worship began with Reverend Suzelle Lynch asking us to recognize a Universal Interdependence Day alongside our National 4th of July celebrations. About a year prior to that, after the pandemic began, I remember having a very strong realization that despite our circumstances, separation from family, friends, colleagues, that I had a deep connection to all other beings in the world. Today, we explore the concept of religious naturalism, which for me helps make sense of all this and help explain it. When questioned about my spiritual beliefs when I was in my 20s, I really could only explain them in vague, general terms. Since identifying as a Unitarian Universalist, however, I've learned ways to express them more clearly, even though I recognize that that ability is still evolving and always will. Our seventh principle, affirming our part in the overall interconnected web of life, is central to my own personal truths. So I wonder, what is it that you find helpful in expressing yours? And might today's worship help you in developing that? I have a book I'll read from today that puts these ideas about how we are an integral part of nature in fairly simple terms. But they're not simple ideas. I, for one, still don't fully understand them, but I do hear and feel the truth in them. And I hope these words make you wonder too. The book is All I See is Part of Me by Chara Curtis and illustrated by Cynthia Aldrich. I am part of all I see, and all I see is part of me. I am my hands, I am my feet, I am the puppy across the street. I used to think that I was small, a little body, and that was all. At this point, our narrator asks the sun and finally sister star to explain how that they all can be one. The narrator, the sun, the stars, how can they all be one and the same? Said sister star, you're larger than you know. You are every place there is to go. And the sister star continues here. In all the world, in all of space, your light shines bright in every place. And when you join it, dot to dot, you'll see that you is what you've got. Inside, outside, below, above, see your light and feel its love. You're asking you when you ask me, so you know everything, don't you see? I looked again at all my light and saw that Sister Star was right. For every question there could be, the answer is inside of me. And there's an illustration here with all these different questions that a child, for example, might ask. So and there's the question is posed here. What answers do you get when you look inside of you yourself? Some examples here. Why do we sleep with our eyes closed? Good question, right? It's good to wonder these things. Perhaps it's so we can see our dreams more clearly. Or does it hurt when a tree loses its leaf? Never thought of that. Here's a possible answer here. No, the tree is just changing its clothes. Oh, okay. And can I slide down a rainbow? Yes, after you get to the top. Some questions that our author poses here. And I was going to mention, I think I missed my note here. Yes, at that last illustration I showed of the star, sister star here, with all these different points of light, that this author was inspired to write this book after becoming aware, very tangible awareness of the earth under her. And it's her connection to the earth itself, sensing billions of dancing lights of life and of love. And then the words for this book came to her later that day, and she felt a real need to share it with the world, and so wrote this book. So these questions then that one asks oneself, these seem kind of simple and kind of playful, but really I think there's a lot of profound answers to life in the questions that our young people bring to us. And the awareness and appreciation for the light, the love, and the wisdom that lives inside each of us, old or young, and everywhere in the universe, is really essential, I believe. And I think that many of you will probably agree with that and share those ideas and discuss those with each other. So there's another way to express some of these ideas about our connection with the universe that are a little bit more scientific, yet also somewhat spiritual in the way they are expressed in the following video by Neil deGrasse Tyson.
What is the most astounding fact you can share with us about the universe?
The most astounding fact
The most astounding fact.
is the knowledge that the atoms that comprise life on Earth, the atoms that make up the human body, are traceable to the crucibles that cooked light elements into heavy elements in their core under extreme temperatures and pressures. These stars, the high mass ones among them, when unstable in their later years, they collapsed and then exploded, scattering their enriched guts across the galaxy. Guts made of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and all the fundamental ingredients of life itself. These ingredients become part of gas clouds that condense, collapse, form the next generation of solar systems, stars with orbiting planets. And those planets now have the ingredients for life itself. So that when I look up at the night sky, and I know that, yes, we are part of this universe, we are in this universe, but perhaps more important than both of those facts is that the universe is in us. When I reflect on that fact, I look up. Many people feel small because they're small and the universe is big, but I feel big because my atoms came from those stars. There's a level of connectivity. That's really what you want in life. You want to feel connected. You want to feel relevant. You want to feel like you're a participant in the goings-on of activities and events around you. That's precisely what we are, just by being alive.
I can't help but be reminded of the Joni Mitchell song Woodstock and the line, "We are stardust, and we've got to get ourselves back to the garden." Well, both the book I read and that video, I think, help tell an important story, that the human story and the universe story are the same story. Just as the Milky Way is the universe in the form of our galaxy, and as an orchid is the universe in the form of a flower, each of us is the universe in the form of a human. And every part of our universe is vital. Well, don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to hearing and learning more this morning.
My name is Carolyn Wells, and I have been a UU member for a couple of years now. My pronouns are she and hers. The following is an excerpt from Religious Naturalism, a theology for UU humanists, part 2. It was written by Damian Wheeler, assistant professor of philosophical theology and religious studies at the United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities. In the early 19th century, the Unitarians were the leading representatives of American theological liberalism. They still are. I think it's fair to say that Unitarian Universalism is the foremost liberal religion in America today. And to me, religious naturalism is the quintessential expression of a liberal theological outlook. Like UU liberals, religious naturalists look to the guidance of reason and experience, including the, quote, direct experience of that transcending mystery affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. For the religious naturalist, that transcending mystery is nature itself. Religious naturalists and Unitarian Universalists are also fellow travelers on liberal theology's middle path. Think about what religious naturalism is. For the religious naturalist, nature is ultimate. There is nothing above, beyond, or in addition to nature. For that reason, the religious naturalist is vehemently anti-supernaturalistic. This means that there's nothing outside of nature. And anything that does exist, including humans and their civilizations, is part of nature. Lest you be scared off by the word, spiritual is derived from the Latin verb to breathe. Perhaps then, spirituality simply has to do with contemplating and paying attention to the breathtaking. In that sense, science can actually be a profound source of spirituality, inasmuch as it reveals just how breathtaking reality is. To quote Carl Sagan, when we recognize our place in an immensity of light years and in the passage of ages, when we grasp the intricacy, beauty, and subtlety of life, then that soaring feeling, that sense of elation and humility combined, is purely spiritual. In short, nature is enough. It is deep, sublime, powerful, vast, awesome, and mysterious enough to elicit our fidelity and religious commitment, to arouse profound spiritual feelings of wonder and thanksgiving, awe and humility. We do not need to place our faith in unworldly gods, nor do we need to long for another life in another realm beyond nature, because this world and this life can provide ample context and support for finding purpose, value, and meaning. That's religious naturalism in a nutshell.
So beautiful. Thank you, Dave, for those stories, Carolyn for that reading, Jen and Ruben for all the wonderful music, and Kelly behind the scenes today. One of my favorite parts of religious naturalism is how often we express gratitude and how that holds our communities better. For as much power as we humans yield in this world, the truth is we are each small. Momentary sparks that have somehow emerged from the ether, developed into an awareness of our current state, and then seem to disappear back to where that no one can truly articulate the full reality of. It is little wonder that many refer to the comfort of a theology that defines what all of this means and allows them to go about their days with a belief that all will be well so long as they follow a list of rules prescribed by that religion that they follow. It's easier. Our religion, Unitarian Universalism, is one where we are invited and encouraged to continue our exploration of theology. It's one of the great things that makes us different. Truth be told, our society has, quote, evolved to a place where most of us don't really give much thought into what our actual theologies even are. That word might even be new. Our theologies or beliefs about a sense of the divine or senses, whether we have explored it deeply or whether what we believe because we do provides the foundation of how we interpret the world as we experience it. That's what theology means. Truth, we have evolved to this place, but this concept that I think that we should experience and discover and kind of dig into is religious naturalism today. But a lot of us, in any society, there's this concept called embedded theology. And studies have shown across all cultures that regard a person's professed belief in a concept of God, if one finds themselves in a life or death situation, say you're on a plane and the pilot announces that the plane is going down, most everyone will begin praying to the most prominent God found in their society. An atheist in this crowd might find themselves praying to someone named God for a miracle. If you were born and raised in India, you might find yourself uttering the same prayer to Ganesh. There are some situations which so deeply expose our human frailty that we tend to find ourselves unable to cope on our own. Enter the concept of a higher power. Whether you think of it much or not, embedded within your psyche is a set of beliefs, perhaps how you were raised, about how all of this works and your place within it. The funny thing about embedded theology is that even if that's not what you believe, your society has put it into your head so much that you might just go there, even though that's not really where your heart goes. And that set of beliefs leads you to make decisions about what then to do. Now, given all this, I think it's important to actually step back and examine the foundations of these beliefs. And more importantly, as Unitarian Universalists, to be willing to adapt or expand our beliefs if we are faced with new ideas that challenge even our most cherished ideals about the way things really are. We have to be mindful of our theologies because they drive decisions about how we interact with the world. And although we are not central, we are powerful, and we do have the potential to create devastating impacts. Christianity relies on an all-powerful, all-knowing central being. Humanism removed the supernatural, or what I often like to call the Santa in the sky God, and placed a rational human at the center. And in many tangible ways, it could be argued that this centering of rationality has led to some pretty good collective outcomes. Like all theologies, there are shortcomings. And one of the shortcomings of humanism falsely places the human at the center and ignores human fallibility. It lacks inspiration to draw humans up from our selfish needs and individual desires. I like how Buddhism talks about there is a thin line between good and evil, and we have to always turn to the good. Jürgen Habermas notes that while anti-humanists may highlight humanism's failure to fulfill its emancipatory ideal, they do not offer an alternative emancipatory project of their own. This is the gap that religious naturalism seeks to fill. Alfred North Whitehead cautioned the prophecy of Francis Bacon has now been fulfilled. A person who at times dreamt of themselves as a little lower than the angels has submitted to become the servant and the minister of nature. It still remains to be seen whether the same actor can play both parts, he says. Nature is always in balance. We are not. That's why we need spiritual practice. A clearer focus on our theology might help us move back into harmony with nature. Collecting to the wonder and power of nature is counter to the power that forms the foundational allure of humanism and many of the distorted interpretations of Christianity that have become pervasive in our society. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe we can draw good from many theologies, and we are challenged to constantly learn more about new ones. Theologies must both empower and inspire. Religious naturalism seeks to do that. I encourage you to consciously explore the current thought leaders in religious naturalism. I can recommend great books another time. It's likely that for many of us, these concepts will not require a long leap. Many gathered here for whom religious naturalism is a new concept will experience it much like many of you who first stumble on Unitarian Universalism. Wow, that's sort of what I've always believed. I just didn't know there was a name for it. But to be transformational, like anything, a thing needs to be consciously embraced and practiced. Our Unitarian Universalist faith calls us to always be seeking and exploring as the world evolves and we learn more. Often we stop at what we learned about when we joined a church. And if you are thinking, I am too old, or I am too busy, or I don't understand, I'm calling you to seek. Seek out newer theologies that ministers like me introduce you to. There's wisdom in so many places. Religious naturalism finds meaning in the totality of nature. In fact, humans are one part of the nature. It does not look to certain aspects of nature to supersede one another. It's a system. When encountering the unexplainable, it is knowing that one day science may explain the unknowing, but all of nature is what makes up the great mystery. Humans are but a speck in the universe. We are some of the least experienced species and yet have wreaked great havoc on the universe. Religious naturalism gives us perspective to step back and realize that not only are we not the most important part of the world, our value and our impact can be more helpful and more powerful in how we relate not just to ourselves, but all of nature. To be religious is to be in relationship. That's all that word really means. To be religious is to be in relationship. Just as you cannot have a spiritual practice alone, you cannot be religious alone. To recognize the wonder, power, messiness, and tragedy in nature is to realize you are not at the center of the world. My father used to say, nature always wins. Instead, you are only larger in being when you are in relationship, thus, when you are religious. Leading thought leader in the religious naturalism movement is cell biologist Dr. Ursula Goodenough, who describes that she has a covenant with mystery and always gives mystery a capital M. She told Krista Tippett on NPR's On Being, "Our scientific understandings of nature, although they deepen all the time and broaden and so on, there are fundamental questions that I think will probably not be answered. And I feel comfortable realizing that there are things that we don't know. And that's where the covenant with mystery comes from. That I enjoy knowing in a way. It's just fine with me to not have the answers to that and just kind of live in that mystery. Mystery generates wonder, and wonder generates awe. The gasp can terrify, or the gasp can emancipate. As I allow myself to experience cosmic and quantum mystery, I join the saints and the visionaries in their experience of what they call divine. And I pulse with the spirit, if not the words of my favorite hymn. Our indigenous and native siblings in teaching us that humans are not at the center of the world. In the Western tradition, there is a recognized hierarchy of beings, with, of course, the humans being on top, the pinnacle of evolution, the darling of creation, and the plants at the bottom. But native ways of knowing, human people are often referred to as younger brothers of creation or younger siblings. We say that humans have the least experience with how to live and thus the most to learn. We must look at our teachers among other species for guidance, says Robin Wall Kimmerer. Robin Wall Kimmerer, as I mentioned, is a professor of environmental biology at State University of New York and a founding director of the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment. She's one of my favorite religious naturalism authors, and she has many videos and podcasts you can check out. In many biblical stories of creation, we have humans at the center and nature existing for their pleasure. This is the opposite way a religious naturalism takes as a point of view. In religious naturalism, we are but a player in the story, but not the entire world. Thus, we all have stories like Turtle Island or Sky Woman, who both bring gifts and are helped by all of the animals, the trees, and the leaves. The gifts she brings are significant because she would not just come to the world to take. Mike Hogue, one of my professors of theology that I studied with in seminary, said, "It is the belief that nature is the whole of reality and that this insight is religiously and morally significant," he says. Humans need stories, grand, compelling stories that help us orient us in our lives and in the cosmos. The epic of evolution is such a story, beautifully suited to anchor our search for planetary consciousness, telling us of our nature, our place, and our context, says Ursula Goodenough in her book, The Sacred Depths of Nature. This is where great stories of our native friends come in to help us understand religious naturalism. As Ursula wrote, so what's the difference between naturalist and a religious naturalist? Both take nature seriously. Both adopt everybody's story as their core narrative. And then, in the words of Loyal Rue, the religious naturalist, also takes nature to heart. Taking something to heart means that your heart can be broken. You can experience moral outrage when that which is revered is desecrated. In many traditions, the educated one, the poet, the philosopher, the priest, and the prophet, and more, are like miracle tellers. In religious naturalism, they are part of the landscape or one part of the nature system. And we also have artists and dancers and writers and scientists and nurses who are telling of and creating miracles. So many folks offer us history and traditions, as do plants and animals, cells and chemistry, that can all bring us transcendence and clarity. For the religious naturalist, nature provides miracles that satisfy the need for wild stories. In telling stories of emergence, of everything being alive, our deep yearning to hear supernatural miracle tales is quenched, but without the supernatural. There is no need for it. Nature is enough. We can now recount miracles of joy and wonder, all from things that are real and true. Dr. Goodenough says, to take the universe on, to ask why are things as they are, is to generate the foundation for everything else. We are, each one of us, ordained to live out our lives in the context of ultimate questions, such as, why is there anything at all, rather than nothing? Where did the laws of physics come from? Why does the universe seem so strange? My response to such questions, she says, has been to articulate that covenant with mystery. See, Ursula makes us deal with the unknown rather than driving herself bananas by trying to respond to every single thing with answers. She honors that she will not know everything. That is her covenant with M, capital M, mystery. Religious naturalists do not believe in what I often term that Santa God in the sky. They often are spiritual in what they find mysticism or spirituality in the grand way that nature fits together in seamless story. Religious naturalists find science to be a profound source to feed their soul, to orient them in the sublime wonder of the universe. The word spiritual is derived from the Latin word to breathe. Spirituality recognizes that which is breathtaking. Thus, religion comes from the Latin word legere, to bind. Thus, a religious naturalist sees that nature is bound together. To practice religion is to be bound together in relationship. To be spiritual is to breathe, and naturalist means that we are breathing in the oneness bound together in the universe. As you consider each theology you encounter, humanism, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, process theology, religious naturalism, and so many more, a question to ask about any of them is who or what is centered? And then based on that answer, how do I interpret that for myself and my loved ones? Each theology then has different implications based on who or what is centered. For example, in indigenous and religious naturalist theologies, the system or the whole environment is centered. Humans are not at the center. So what does that mean? So what, as we say? In religious naturalism, we look at the humans as part of the environment, and so are the bugs, the moss, the trees, and the clouds. Now, I want to show you a place that I love to go, and maybe you've been there too. I love to go to the Kickapoo Valley in western Wisconsin. Perhaps you know it. Kickapoo is part of where the Algonquin-speaking Indians related to the Sauk and the Fox lived. You can see the valleys there in the Kickapoo Valley ebb and flow and are covered with beautiful trees. That wasn't always the way. It's a place that I love to take canoes and my family, and we canoe down amongst all these beautiful rock formations. My son and his friends love to play in the river. We love to see the beautiful trees and farms that are there, and you can see how expansive that river is. In fact, the word Kickapoo means to go here and go there, and it's often recognized as some of the most amazing canoeing in the country because you can travel for a long time without making a huge amount of distance, but the road or the river is so interesting. Now, this land was returned to this after the humans came in and made some mistakes. How was this land returned? This land was returned because what happened is that the native people had it figured out, and it was a beautiful giving land. And then as the settlers came in, they decided that it was really important to put in squares of farming, right? And all of these places where crops and things were, yikes. Hold on, I'm having a technical difficulty. There you go. All right. Sorry about that. My slideshow made a funny little blip. In any case, so as the human settlers and the Europeans came in, they divided the land into rectangles. They didn't follow the teachings of the land. Cows stomped on all the grassland, and fields grew the same crops year after year. Every time it rained, it caused flash flooding in western Wisconsin. And massive damage would happen, and many people would die. Entire crops would be wiped out, homes would be lost. And rather than looking at the area of flooding, they stood back and blamed the river. The river must be bad. They blamed the slope of the land. They blamed things outside of themselves. These European settlers had a faith that told them that they were the center. They were the center of the Garden of Eden, as the story goes. And 100 years later, studying farming came in to get everyone to farm. And now we know that we have to prevent erosion and do farming differently. But at the time, they let the cows go wherever and stomped down all the woodlands and large grasses. They didn't rotate crops. Instead, they thought, you know what we need? We need a huge dam. We'll dam that river. And so they actually started to build the dam. And they had this vision that they'd build a dam and have a great lake, and it would be just like Wisconsin Dells, and it would be a new tourist area. They wanted quick answers and lots of money. they thought, hey, crop rotation takes too long, and why shouldn't they be able to do whatever they want with the land because they own it? They didn't take on that idea that they were guests on the land. And so they thought the dam was going to be this great coming for them. And then more environmental studies were done because people were also reticent to give up any land and sell it to the government so that they could build this dam and this lake. They wanted to keep their farms. And so it took a really long time to get enough land in order to sell, to buy up all that they needed to build the dam. And then more environmental studies were done, and they said, hey, wait a minute. A dam will cause a cesspool. The way that this land is formed, damming up this river will not make a great lake, but instead will just sit and it'll stink and people won't want a vacation here. And so meanwhile, it took them so long to kind of do all these studies and everything. The land that they did buy, that no one was farming on, started to revert back to what it was when native people, when our Potawatomi and Algonquin, when all of them walked the land. The grasses started to come back. And those farmers that were in the area, they started following that advice of crop rotation and contoured rows and controlled grazing. And guess what? When you go see it now, that soil erosion was cut by 75%. And guess what? Also, if you go to the Kickapoo Valley Reserve, you can see just one column of that dam was ever built. They realized that not only would a dam cause more problems, but there were other ways to control the flooding. And we don't hear about people dying in floods and things like that anymore, but sometimes we do get a lot of water in that area. But now there are trees and grasses and bugs and fishing and ways to handle that flooding. And it is able to take care of itself by the humans getting out of the way. So if this way of looking at things, where humans are part of the ecosystem, and the universe is at the center as opposed to one species, you might be a religious naturalist. Religious naturalism honors that there is much we can know and cannot know. It lifts up that humans are part of the environment, part of science, but not the entire world, and not necessarily the most important. After all, most of history has existed without us. Religious naturalism brings humility to other theologies. Couldn't we all use some humility right now?
UUC Church West Split the Plate program is one of outreach and of generosity. Each month, we give half of all undesignated offerings to a nonprofit organization to help us live our Unitarian Universalist values and to serve our greater community. Our Split the Plate partner from mid-July through the end of August is the Gathering of Southeastern Wisconsin. The Gathering is a community of guests and of staff and of volunteers united by the common goal, which is to feed the hungry in mind, in body, and in spirit. At the gathering, volunteers provide 10 to 11 free meals each week, cooked on site at 4 different Milwaukee locations, to those who would otherwise go hungry. The gathering also offers services associated with ending hunger and homelessness and works to educate our greater community on hunger issues. They have continued their service throughout the COVID-19 pandemic by providing carry-out meal service and will continue to serve carry-out meals to the hungry until it is safe again to serve meals indoors. To support the gathering for the next 7 weeks, please go to the UUCW website's Donate tab and select Split the Plate from the menu provided. Or you can text or you can email your donation today using the information found here. Today, I thank you for your generosity to the gathering.
Thank you. My beloved author favorite, in fact, her book Braiding Sweetgrass is probably what I consider my Bible. Robin Wall Kimmerer says, nature herself is a moving target, especially in an era of rapid climate change. Species composition may change, but the relationship endures. It is the most authentic facet of restoration. And here is what the most challenging and where the most rewarding work lies for all of us. In restoring a relationship of respect, responsibility, reciprocity, and love.
And it's our turn now, long overdue. Let us hold a giveaway for Mother Earth spread our blankets out for her and pile them high with gifts of our own making. Imagine the books, the paintings, the poems, the clever machines, the compassionate acts, the transcendent ideas, the perfect tools, the fierce defense of all that has been given. Gifts of mind, hands, heart, voice, and vision, all offered up on behalf of the earth. Whatever our gift, we are called to give it and to dance for the renewal of the world in return for the privilege of breath.